Good morning. Are we on? Good morning, everybody. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you to the ridiculously amazing PHOTOVILLE team. They have been blowing my mind for 7 full years now. And I think it was 7 years ago that Laura and I met in the misting tent in 100-degree weather in June, and then you decided to brilliantly switch it to September because the weather would be so perfect. So they've handled everything, 100 degrees, torrential downpours, and honestly, they are just this seemingly unflustered bunch of absolute troopers, and we should all applaud them. Thank you also to Photoshelter for putting on an excellent day's program that I just very quickly ran through, but you're all here, so you know why. So yes, my name is Julie Grahame, and I have been working in the photography industry for about 30 years. Among other things, I work for the estate of Yusuf Karsh. I'm sure you've all heard of him. And if you haven't, you'll look him up. I handle all the inquiries for licensing of his archive here in North America. And I actually manage and maintain this website. I didn't learn my lines, I'm sorry. When Karsh closed his studio in 1992, all of his negatives, transparencies, and files went to the National Archives in Ottawa. They are accessible, but it takes weeks. So if I need a scan of something, I have to wait 8 to 10 weeks. So naturally, the requests are for the more famous people. So we scanned in high res from his original prints, as we've been able to do so. They exist outside of the archives in Ottawa. No posthumous prints are allowed, so we're quite limited in what we can actually do and what we can make available. So we now use the website really as our archive, and I actually write news articles every couple of days for the site. We have, excellent news like Winston Churchill being on the £5 note. And we're just trying to keep the work alive by using this site and finding clever ways to bring his work to the public. I have launched this site about 18 months ago, and I'm just starting to see it really be successful in search. So I'm now seeing our images within the first few search results in a Google image search. Our portrait of Nelson Mandela has become the iconic image of him, and on his centenary, we found 2,000 people coming directly to that page on the site. So if you can imagine, really, that this is our archive, and I use this website accordingly. 2,500 to 3,000 people every single week come to the site. And when I talk to photographers about exhibitions offline in stores and galleries and what have you, I just think about how many more people can come to see your work on the web. And I think everybody should remember how important that is. I also publish a magazine. I haven't got slides for that, but just a bit more on Karsh in case some of you aren't familiar with him. I can't help but promote his work wherever I go. Work that people don't know Karsh even made. So if I've got you on my website for 3 to 5 minutes, I'm sure you're going to discover things that you didn't know he ever did. I publish a photography magazine on the web, which I think probably some of you know me for, and I've just realized that after 9 years of publishing features, I now have this incredible archive of mostly contemporary photography too, and I need to start thinking about how that works for me and my contributors over time. Okay, so I met Mary here at the end, Mary Engel, when I was at a fundraiser for Obama in 2007. When I saw a Ruth Orkin photograph up for auction, and I joined the American Photography Archives group that she had founded in 2000 as soon as I heard about it for my work with the Karsh estate, and it became my support group. Mary asked me to join the board a couple of years ago, and I have been very proud to sit as vice president and secretary. I've always wanted the word vice in my title, and now I have it. I've seen our membership increase and diversify enormously over time, and I think that we currently have 80 plus individual photographers, more than 70 archives, 4 foundations, and 35 different archivists, galleries, institutions, and students are all now members of APAG. So I encourage you to look into that when we're done. I first heard of PhotoWings last year here at PhotoVille, and this organization has been on my radar ever since. Suzie will speak extensively, hopefully, about PhotoWings, and you can appreciate all of the content on their website at your leisure. But do make sure to visit them. Their booth is just inside the entry of PhotoVille. She has an amazing program going on. We're going to have time for questions at the end, so if you could hold off till then. Bios, brief bios. Mary Engel is an award-winning filmmaker. She's the director of the Ruth Orkin Morris Engel Film and Photo Archive and the founder and president of the American Photography Archives Group. She has been the director of the Ruth Orkin Photo Archive since its inception in 1985. Mary is responsible for all aspects of running the archive, including sales, licensing, marketing, legal issues, and other areas. She works with photography galleries, museums, auction houses throughout the States and abroad, and she has published 4 catalogs of photography. Suzie is a photographer, speaker, educator, and she is giving back to the world that has given her so much by creating and running an educational nonprofit organization called PhotoWings. Their mission is to highlight and help facilitate the power of photography to influence the world. They help photography be better understood, created, utilized, seen, and saved. Through PhotoWings, Suzie concentrates on bringing the photos, knowledge, and skills around photography to the world, both inside and outside the photo silo, across generations, cultures, and disciplines. And with that, I give you Mary Engel.
Thank you, Julie. Is it on? Yeah, okay. Now I can hear it. Thank you, Julie. Thank you to Laura and Jordan and my newer friend, Suzie, who we've gotten to know and we're going to get to know better. It's a pleasure to be here. I've come the last almost every year, but I've never been on a panel, so it's an honor to do this. So talking a little bit about me and my background for a couple minutes, then I'm going to show you a couple slides on my parents and on the group, and then I'm going to give you 10 tips that I think you should know about archiving and what you should think about for the future. So basically, this is not something that I thought I was going to do. I didn't know what I was going to do. I went to a number of different colleges. I ended up working at Art News and Showtime. And then my last job was at William Morris Agency in the training program, which was sort of like a grad school for what I do now, because what I'm doing is being an agent for photography. And it's a lot easier pushing somebody else's work than pushing your own work. And I grew up with 2 parents, which you'll see a couple photos from in a minute. One was who was a much more aggressive kind of, look at my work, which was my mom, and the other one was more of my father, who wanted people to come see his work. And anyway, let me go back for a minute. For me, film and photography was everything in my life. We had Thanksgiving, but in terms of holidays in my childhood, the Academy Awards was the most important thing. We showed my parents' films at birthday parties. My mother had 500-watt floodlights in every room, believe it or not. But all the photos are great. I mean, I'm happy to have all the photos. There's no nudes. They're not embarrassing. And there's tremendous and massive amounts of photos of me. They're in scrapbooks. And that's a really key thing to know, that they're in scrapbooks. They're available for me to look at. I occasionally show my son. But anyway, it's important to not only just shoot, but to try to do something with the photos and make them available. Right now, I'm sort of at the point where I'm trying to figure out with my son, how do I bring him the photos that I've shot of him the last 10 years. The first sort of 7 years of his life I do have also in scrapbooks, because I used to make prints. But I'm sure many of you, if you have kids, I don't know what you're doing. And it's important to think about, just on a personal level, in terms of professionally, that's a whole other thing we're going to get into. So let me show some photos, and I can talk more. So I founded this group along with Grayson Danzig, who's the executive vice president over there, you can look up his new Billie Holiday book that he did on his father's work, Jerry Danzig. And we started APAG in 2000. That we had people kept being sent to me to talk to me, and it just became a lot of time. So we thought, let's have a dinner. So we had a dinner with 5 people, and then it grew and grew and grew. But let me go back. So all of this, though, started, and the reason I'm in archiving to begin with is because of my parents. And when you have a parent who's an artist, you don't necessarily think you're going to take over their work. Some people do, but I think a lot of us, it fell into our lap. And then you have to figure out what to do. My mom passed away in '85. So over 30 years ago, I've been handling the work, and there was nobody for me to turn to. But this is them. This is some of their work. This is starting with a couple of my mom's, Einstein, White Stoops from the Upper West Side, the boy jumping from Gansevoort Pier. This one you may know. I'm just going to tell you real quick because people always ask me. It was not set up, just partially. My mom was doing a picture story my mother met Jinx, that's her nickname, in the hotel, and wanted to do a picture story of what their travels had been like. This was 51 after the war. There were very few American women out and traveling, and this sort of happened. And also, FYI, I don't allow it to be used for sexual harassment and the Me Too movement, which I do get requests for, because it was a whole different era, it's a different culture, and she and my mother didn't feel that way. I'm just putting it out there because I get lots of requests. Here's some of my dad's work from Coney Island. It's where he grew up. Morris Engel. This is a photo from when he was in the Photo League, and he did something called the Harlem Document with Aaron Siskin. I'm just showing you just a couple. This is a movie. Has anybody seen this movie? Okay, good. So you're all in Brooklyn. If you haven't seen it, I will push that you should look it up if you want. It's just important in the independent film world, and it was nominated for an Academy Award and won at Venice. And I spend a lot of my time, even though I have thousands and thousands of images, on this movie and on American Girl in Italy. It's sometimes how things work out, and maybe some of you feel that way too. This is one of my favorite pictures of my mom, that my mom took of me and my dad. See, they were sweet. They weren't, I don't consider exploitive. I feel lucky. This is my son. My mother always told me wherever I went to document, where I was and what I did. So I certainly do document my son. And he just went off to college last week, so anyway, but it's all good. He's all good. So I do document him too. I digress again a little bit. This is my mother and Jinx. And what I wanted to say also is, along with an archive, you don't just get the pictures, but you get other things. You get people sometimes. So this was one of my mother's subjects who I became dear friends with. She just passed away in May at the age of 90. But when you think of your archives and what you have in them, and I know photographers and artists are creative people, and they probably collect a lot, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. You're not only, so I'm saying two things at the same time. You want to make sure you don't leave your entire life to the next generation. If you are going to leave your photos, think long and hard about everything else if it's not directly connected to your career. I'm just a tidbit I'm throwing out there. Because what I got also is the relationship, which is incredible, with her, with Leonard Bernstein, Julie Harris, who narrated my documentary. So I'm just going to run through these. We had a big celebration for the 60th anniversary in Toronto. Stephen Bolger is a great dealer in Toronto. This is what my archive looks like. So you see what I'm dealing with. But I know about 75% of what's there. Not always, but if I can't get to the photo, what's the point of having it? So again, you want to think about what you have, how organized it is, who you know or whoever is going to inherit it in the future, or I'm maybe thinking too much ahead for some of you. You're maybe at the start of your careers, but these are just things one needs to think about, in the future. So again, here's APAG. I'm very proud of APAG. This is the three of us. We're able to take a table now at APAD. If everybody goes to APAD now, because they opened it up to book dealers and to organizations. George Tice, our whole membership list is online. His daughters. Another thing I'm very proud of is the fact that somebody like George Tice comes with adult daughters who are going to inherit the archive, and it's incredible that they can talk about these things out in the open and in the meetings. And they're dealing with these things, so it's not like some private secret thing at home. And we've had a number of different families like that. Chester Higgins and Carrie Mae Weems. We had an impromptu meeting at APAD. These are some of our members' work. Dan Kramer is a big Dylan photographer. Chester Higgins, again, Julie's guy, Harsh. Harold Feinstein. This is just a sample of some of them, but we have, I guess it's over 150, 175 members. One of my favorites, Peter Simon, Sam Shaw. Some of these are photographers, some of them are archives. So if you look at the website, you'll see it's half and half about, okay? I'm gonna wrap up. This is our seminar. We have 3 meetings a year at ICP. We have an annual seminar. I love group photos, so we do lots of group photos. We do field trips. Sean Corcoran at the Museum of the City of New York. We went up to Gordon Parks in Pleasantville. It's interesting to see how archives are organized for us. So this is really helpful. This is James Martin from Avedon, who was incredibly gracious. We took 35 people there. He showed us all over. This is how an archive could look. This app happens to be George Tice. I've never seen it in person, but I just love how pretty it is.
Could it be Photoshop?
Maybe.
Actually a mess.
I put this photo up, which it's interesting. My father's photo. It's a street fair. And my son saw it and said, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, this is one of his favorite rappers. There's no photo credit, right? But 57,000, or what is that, 47,000 people. He has 2.4 million followers. You know, if you can try to find me ASAP Ferg's manager and I can tell him the right credit line, I'd be happy to. But I put that in the notes of our meeting recently, and somebody said to me, well, why didn't you just find them? You know, you can't always, and you have to make decisions with your work. And this is, Julie and I talk about this all the time, that you know, we're making a choice to promote our work the way we want to. And I don't give things to charity, but I do try to always make requests happen, and I try to negotiate. How many times does somebody come to you and say, I'm offering you this price and it's a fantastic offer? Does that happen? I mean, they undercut, right. So the point is it barely ever happens that they come to us with licensing requests and we say, fantastic, I love it. But in any event, you make choices, and it's easier for me handling the archive to make the choice. This is our book, which I have here, but we're almost out of. And I'm going to just finish. This is Peter reading our book. I'm just going to finish with my tips. Sorry. And I don't have a card for it, but I'm going to read them real quick. And then I put them on the APAG website under education. So I'm just going to read like the first sentence of each one. So don't worry writing them down, because they're right. I put them right on the website under education at apag.us. So think about the type of person you might leave your work to. Leave a list of what you want to have happen. Make a list of your top 100 photos. My mom did. It was very clear to me what was important to her. I always say you don't work with your entire archive, but you work with your top 100, top 200, 300. Make recordings, especially working photographers, or notes about certain photos or important jobs. Leave a list of friends, dealers, or other photography experts you trust. Don't leave everything. Don't. Like, declutter now. You know, you don't need all your financial stuff. You don't need everything about, every detail about every job you've ever done. That's my opinion, because the next person's going to get bogged down with all of that stuff. Sign all existing prints. Maybe that's in certain types of photographers. For commercial photographers, maybe if you're not selling fine art prints, it's not as important. But if you are selling fine art prints, if you have an entire archive, sign them. And last but not least, make sure you have a will. And make sure you stipulate that you want the archive kept together as a whole, so you don't have your kids or people competing against themselves, which has happened. So I think that's it for now. Everything's on our website. There's Orkin Photo, Engel Photo, apag.us, and if you see me around, feel free to ask any questions if you have anything. Thank you so much.
Everything I'm going to talk about is pretty much in our tent, and it's on our website. I really invite you to spend some time on both. Outside, we have some of our handouts. I love props, so this is one of them. And also, as I'll mention, I really am a believer in mentoring, and I love good quotes, so we put 2 of our really good quotes on bookmarks. And not too many people have bookmarks, so if you don't want to put them on a bookmark, you can put them on a shelf or something. So she already said our mission statement, so I will not repeat it again. But I will talk about our words. When I created PhotoWings, I was really inspired by the photographers I'd met. I've been a photographer my whole life, and I found myself in a position to give back. And I spent 4 years of my late husband being ill to really search the net to figure out what was out there and what I could do a little bit different. And over that time, I realized we created it in 2005. So we've really kind of refined a lot of that knowledge to these words here. And rather than do what everybody else does and really concentrate on the photos, what really interests me is it's the images, of course, but the wisdom of the photographers and how inspiring that is and how you can really use that. And I would say that to think about, it's not only your images, that how you think and what you do, it's part of your legacy, and to think about it over the time of your career. So we want to further benefit from and utilize photography. I keep hearing from photographers that they don't necessarily think that their images make a difference. They have a wonderful exhibit and it ends up in their closet after the exhibit is down. So the ideas never go away. So we do so in a myriad of ways, mostly approaching our work through these words, but they're changing all the time. So if you have any we haven't thought of, please come tell us. And through that lens, along with our wonderful partners, and there's a big banner with all of our partners on it, and it's in some of the handouts there, we've created a media archive of hundreds of hours of photographers' wisdom, and that also includes curators and picture professionals, and the knowledge that goes along with those images. And we've incorporated into educational content that's useful not only for photographers, but in the educational world, business world. We've incorporated it into curriculum so that it really resonates with others. And it's also one of the things I realized, it's not just useful in your work, but also in your life. Because how much of our time do we actually use working? And then there's all these other things like resilience and critical thinking. How do the best photographers in the world do what they do? So I spend a lot of time in the photo world, but I also spend a lot of time out of it. And I'm a really big believer in learning from and connecting with others across generations, disciplines, and cultures. And it came from personal experience over many years. Like I said, I love quotes. One of them was a photo teacher I had, and he said, "I can't teach you anything you can't learn on your own, but what I can do is save you time." And that's one of the ones on the note cards. I love that. So, like I said, I spend a lot of time outside the photo silo. I keep hearing that word, photo silo, and there's so many other ways, if you open your mind, to think about engaging with people that you might not have. There's so many things online as well. So to think about that. And most of what we do is build around that perspective. So I've discovered it's also valuable in general education to help develop social emotional learning skills and executive function skills. The wisdom and skills that photographers have are translatable and transferable outside of our world. They're the same skills. So that's, like I said, that's also part of your legacy, sharing what you do, how you do it, and how you think. I just believe photographers' voices are underutilized. So if you think of it that way, it opens up a lot of doors outside of the photo silo. And it makes it possible to think about, for others, to think about photography with fresh eyes. You're not just saying it's an image, you're also thinking about these other skills. And that's why Laura's doing what she's doing. That's why many of our partners are doing what they're doing as well. And one of the things that I've also learned, and it's kind of horrifying to me, is that the most iconic names in photography, people outside the photo world don't know them. They may know the image, but they know nothing about them and how they do what they do. So that's why we've created our organization in a different way. They're really hungry for that kind of thinking. So this is one of the videos that we've,
As a viewer, you add another layer of information to it. You think about, you use your own imagination to like think, okay, what did it smell like there? And what happened before and after? And so it really actively involves the viewer.
And they can make some decisions about it, and they can like it or not like it, or they can learn something from it, or they can be surprised by it, or they can be moved to weep by it.
And that is beautiful, no? That everybody and every experience couldn't reach your eyes and your way of seeing the world. It's an amazing process that never stops. It's a never-ending process that you are learning, and growing, and thinking about photography in different ways with the time, no?
It changes the way I see the world over and over again. That's one of the reasons I keep doing it.
So another thing that we've really come to realize over time, and I really appreciate, is that images really change in meaning over time. And that goes for some of the things that you were speaking to as well. As soon as you take a photograph, it becomes a memory, and it's documenting history. So I looked up legacy, since this is a panel on legacy, and it says anything that's handed down from the past. So something that may not seem important today may later become really cherished to somebody of another generation, or really important, like some of Ron's other work. So we've partnered with them and Photoshelter on the Lost Rolls. And along those lines, we've partnered with Ron and Lauren to create curriculum that's going to be brought, so those ideas around memory and the value of those old photos, so they're going to be brought into schools and communities, and it's really created a new archive. So we're partnering with United Photo Industries, who we adore, and PHOTOVILLE. So they not only document the talks, as she mentioned, to share for free to the world, but also to connect exhibitors at PHOTOVILLE with educators, and they sit around and they interpret those projects into curriculum, and they use it in other ways as well. So we really want to utilize photography more. We're especially interested in people utilizing photography for self-discovery and to help disrupt stereotyping, to really encourage people to talk with one another more, to learn about one another more, especially, again, across generations, cultures, and disciplines. There may be somebody that you never met in your life that can really change your life. So we have our Photo Legacy project, and that's part of it with Everyday. And we incorporate it into the classroom and communities, for use in work and in life, as I said. And you might consider how you incorporate photography as a conversation starter. Along those lines, we have a flash grant. You might want to stop by our tent to see a little bit more about it.
You're going to go up on a porch with grandma or a stranger. You're going to chew the fat. You're going to share what you have in common. You're going to be delightfully excited about the things they know that you've never heard of, and that boosts their ego, and it makes them feel like their life wasn't a waste. And you will have a relationship that will seem months old in 2 hours. There's people, I've sat on a bus, and I knew them better in 2 hours than people at work I've known for 10 years, because we talked about stuff that mattered. So if you sit down with grandma or grandpa, let's talk about life. They've been waiting 50 years for this moment. If they trust you and like you, and they see an earnest interest of something that they can not just have documented for history, but also something you can run with and make your life better, you're going to walk away, well, all of you are going to walk away floating on air, that you did something.
Okay, and very quickly, this other one is important.
The young lad that was paired with her afterwards, he was just odd. All he kept saying was like, did you hear her story? Did you hear her story?
It's me on holidays when I went to New York. I'm about 4 years of age, and it's me on top of the Twin Towers, the World Trade Center. Yeah.
Well,
so tell me about yours.
I have something similar in that I'm on my holidays as well.
Ah.
And I'm not high up in New York. I'm with my great-grandmother in her log cabin. Lovely. Down in the depths of country in Latvia.
In the lovely countryside.
Lovely.
I just thought it was pretty poignant because I'll never ever be there again, and no one else really will.
That's why you picked the picture.
Yeah.
Well, I actually chose mine because of the 4 generations.
Yeah.
But a similar time after this picture, of course, the Second World War started. So the World Trade Center and the Second World War
Yeah.
were to follow these
So we're in places,
photographs.
we're in happy places in them places, and then soon after,
But we weren't to know.
war was to come.
We weren't to know. We
No.
were on our happy holidays.
Yeah, that's it.
I'm fond of saying this, only a photograph can show you what your mother looked like when she was 20 and the moonlight fell on her face in just a way that maybe her skin glowed. I mean, it's really hard to replicate that outside of a photograph.
There's a kind of openness and a kind of honesty of purpose in those pictures. They're just to record our families as the years go by. You know, they're not made in a way to try to make a great photograph. They're not trying to tell a story necessarily, but they tell a story almost in spite of themselves. And so I had a kind of, it built up a kind of admiration for me in this archive, in this, not even an archive, in this kind of library almost of family pictures, you know, and I really got a lot out of looking through them. The idea is the desire to hang on to memory, that time is constantly passing, that the clock is constantly ticking. Every moment that passes, we miss. And so the camera gives us an opportunity to freeze and hang on to some of them. And the job for a documentary photographer is to edit the world and decide which of those moments are the most important to hang on to, and then hang on to them in a way that's dynamic and interesting and shows it to us in a way that we didn't just remember seconds before it passing.
I realized that my job was more than just a journalist. My job was a historian in many ways, and my job was an archiver of memories.
Literally thousands of photographs and albums from people's estates and families' lives that were just going to be literally tossed in landfill. Whole lives. And some of them were the most remarkable little pictures that you couldn't help but wonder, first of all, why were they ending up here? Like, what was the tragedy of the family that there was no one to carry this forward or wanted to? But secondly, like, who were these people and what were their lives and what were these stories?
So we would encourage you to not throw away old photo albums, to think about them. Make sure to migrate your cell phones, your digital images, and just to think about utilizing them. And we're doing that work, and we hope you will as well.
Great, thank you. We have about 10 minutes. I'd like to get the temperature in the room. Do people have questions? We've got questions. Okay, fabulous. Do we have a mic for the questionnaires? Okay, Stella.
I have a question for you, Julie. What's the name of your magazine that you have online?
Okay, let's do this for a minute. URLs of relevance for this morning. We have apag.us, apag.us. We have engelphoto.com, orkinphoto.com, photowings.org, karsh.org, and aCurator.com. Thank you, Stella, my agent. Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
I have some family photos that are from 80 to 100 years old, and they're hanging on my wall right now, but what's the best way to preserve them?
Ladies, do you want to speak to this? Mary, perhaps?
I mean, make sure they're in acid-free. Are they in acid-free mats? Is it browning the inside of the mat, or?
I don't know.
If they've lasted this long, I wouldn't worry. I mean, really, honestly, if it's browning, you could remat them. But you know, unless they're of tremendous value, I mean, I wouldn't bother if you're enjoying them. The most important thing is the photos are up and you're enjoying them. Quite honestly.
Well, I'd heard that maybe you could encapsulate them in some sort of a container made of glass and a gas, or no?
I mean, maybe you can talk to experts, but what's the point of that? I mean, do you want to just save them for family, or?
Yeah, pretty much to hand down.
Oh, you just you know, look online at a conservation. Peter Mastardo and Paul Messier. What are their websites? Those are the two major professional photography. Yeah, Better Image, thank you. Yeah, one of them is Better Image. So just look online. They have a lot of information, but
Great. Thank
I
you
wouldn't
so
go
much.
crazy. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we have a video on our site with an archivist. There's people that do that all the time, and I'd suggest you go and visit one.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you. Hi. So my father worked as an artist all his life, and when we migrated from Pakistan, everything was lost. So he's still alive, and I'm wondering if there's a way to kind of record him, talk about his work. Is there a website or a resource that you guys can share? Any tips on how to interview him?
Can anyone from Photoshelter speak to this at all? Is that something you guys do? Where are you? No? Check out Photoshelter because they do have various facilities and services. Recording somebody and uploading that video and audio. I mean, yes, please do it. Just do it. Absolutely, of course. Equipment-wise, you know, we have sort of facilities at our fingertips. I don't think
My camera allowed me.
I don't think you need to overthink it, Suzie.
I would suggest StoryCorps is very good, but they don't, we've been to see them, and they don't really want to do photography, which is one of the reasons that Ron is doing the Photo Legacy project as well. You can just put a camera up in front of you and have a conversation, and we've done that with some of our grantees.
Ron Haviv was in the Lost Roles story that Suzie touched on. He's around. If you can find him, it would be really interesting. Sit down and chat that through with him. Ron Haviv, Haviv.
Mm-hmm. But just put up a camera and have a conversation. Pull out the old photo albums and just have a conversation, because so many of the reasons that images are lost is because people don't know who's in them.
At the same time, I have probably about 20 hours of audio where the curator for the Karsh estate sat down with Mr. Karsh and tried to get him to talk about the shoots. And it goes like this. So, Yusuf, tell me about what happened when you photographed Leonard Bernstein. Estrelita, can you remember what happened when I photographed Leonard Bernstein?
Right. So make it direct.
Write stuff down.
Yeah.
Yes.
What is the first thing to do when you start archiving your photographs?
Where do you
That's
start?
a good question. Well, what do you
always
think?
the big question.
What do you think?
Besides scanning.
Well, to me, I would say organization. I mean, organization, so you have a sense of what you have. You have some inventory or databases. You don't have to scan everything. I mean, people say to me, oh, is the archive all scanned in? I said, absolutely not. I scan as needed, because that's what my resources allow. Certain people are able to scan every single thing. But that's one suggestion. Julie, I mean, what would you
Yeah,
say?
I think for me it's editing, because once you've edited, you're just dealing with less. And I've had consulting clients who find it impossible to just delete something that's completely out of focus and underexposed because they think maybe one day they'll fix it. Every time you go back to that folder or whatever, you're going through all that material again. So my priority is editing, curating the best. I mean, as Mary said, 100, 200. If you all think about how many of the iconic images you can actually conjure up in your head of your most famous favorite photographers, can you count them on a couple of hands? Probably. It's a really important point.
And especially these days, I don't know how you people do it, but I mean, I have a friend, I won't mention any names, we went on vacation, he shot 1,800 photos. I know some people shoot tremendous amounts, and you have to think long and hard about, I mean, you guys are spending time on this all the time, but I don't know how you can possibly even leave it to somebody and organize an archive if you have like thousands and thousands and thousands, and actually formats are changing constantly. We talked about somebody doing a book project from 10 years ago, and luckily the hard drive worked, but yeah, I would definitely say, I know it may sound terrible, but an editor, my mother used to say that she would let her finger freeze before she clicked the shutter. This is in the old days, because some of her best images are on, like American Girl in Italy, 3 rolls. So when you have, I don't know who has, I mean, do people have, people have hundreds of thousands of photos. I mean, I think you're going to make yourself crazy. And if decluttering and editing and organizing is, I think, key. That's my suggestion. So,
I would also suggest that you journal. We have a wonderful video with Victor Blue talking about that, because otherwise, down the road, somebody may take your image and give it another meaning that you never intended. And as Ron will say, that he thought that his photos were his memory, and he realized later that he didn't remember the images. So if you journal, you can also think about what your thoughts were around it, and it's interesting to revisit.
Any other questions? Yes.
I was going to a flea market type of situation, and someone had put all their photos at the flea market, and they documented what Germany looked like after World War II. And they were just laying there, and I couldn't buy them at the time. But what do you do when you find that kind of? Is there some place that you can send them to? What can you do?
Well, yeah, I mean, if you haven't found Vivian Maier, you know.
Yeah.
But no, it's a good point. I mean, one of the biggest challenges for our members at APAG, you know, we have incredible archives, and people are constantly striving and searching to understand who might acquire them from the actual owner. This is one of our biggest challenges. There's a finite number of people collecting and buying and acquiring and wanting to include in their institutions. Unfortunately, stuff is going to get lost, or you get lucky and you meet a Suzie, or you get lucky and you meet a Mary and you join a group. But otherwise, sure, yeah, stuff is getting thrown away.
Yeah, I would suggest that if it's really an important historic one, you Google someone that cares about that subject. And I will tell you, a lot of photo curators collect vernacular images, which is what that would be considered. So go to somebody who cares deeply about that subject, and they'll probably be thrilled.
Well, I mean, how much were you? Was it really cheap? Just like nothing?
This is Germany after World War. I mean, just really well documented. It looked at the whole, and it looked like the guy was an amateur photographer, and so it was sad. I just had to leave them there. I had no place.
And you're still thinking about it, which is really sad.
Well, at least get the name of the dealer. I mean, somebody's going to swoop in at some point if there's any value, or get the name of the dealer.
It wasn't even a dealer. It was just a bunch of things thrown on a table. I just so happened to
But
be,
nobody owned them?
I don't know. It was just stuff. It was just stuff.
Well, then it depends on how much energy you have. I mean, it's always a wonderful thought to save them, but it's...
If I could have directed somebody there, I would have. I didn't know
Right.
what to do. So that's
I mean, I think it happens to everybody all the time, where you see things that should be in a better place and they're not, or somebody's work that, you know, I mean, in a bigger picture should be in a museum, and this person's and not that person. But I mean, that's a broader scope. But yeah.
Okay, last question. Got like 1 minute left. Yes, madam.
Do you worry about migrating the digital content that you have to keep it current? I know film, it's there.
Yes.
It's always there. You preserve it.
Yes.
It's there. It's film. Okay.
Yes.
But the digital formats keep changing, so that's.
Yes, I think I'm not the expert at all, but that's a major issue for all of us. And not only is that changing, but how you present your photos, how you deal with the internet and social media. It's like changing every day.
Yeah,
You know.
I had a very unfortunate, very bad hard drive crash, and I hadn't backed up for just enough time for it to be incredibly annoying. And I found a woman locally who helped me get back up and running. But I realized that I need to consult with someone to understand how to. I don't even have as much as you guys are going to have because I don't shoot. But just to be understanding better what is happening, what is changing, and who's using what. I mean, ultimately, we're just adding storage. That's all it's ever going to be, unless you edit really hard.
Yeah.
But I would recommend finding someone, find a group, find a conversation, a discussion about how other photographers are doing that. Because there are professionals out there who can advise you on how not to get scared and not to lose, have a digital failure.
Yeah, that's really a crisis that a lot of people think about. Stuart Brand calls it the digital dark ages. And imagine all the cell phone pictures that everyone has and the hard drives and it's a potential crisis, and that's one of the reasons we do what we do.